When Master Jimmy Titus was a little boy of 5, he could have been and should have been the happiest boy alive, for he had a sword and cannon and a fine 2-bladed knife. He had a bag of marbles and he had a drum and fife. He had a gorgeous music box that played a dozen tunes, and though he was a little boy, he wore long pantaloons. But the best of all his treasures, and his favourite of course, was his dappled chestnut Terrico, a gallant rocking horse. Now every night at 6 o'clock when Jimmy went to bed, he used to blanket Terrico and see that he was fed. He took a little halter rope and tied him to a chair, and first thing in the morning he would look to see him there. One night in mid-December, Jimmy wakened with a start. He dreamed his horse was eating him and tearing him apart. But when his eyes were open and he looked at Terrico, the animal was on the bed and rocking to and fro. And Terrico was calling as he bit at Jimmy's knee, "Get up, you Jimmy Titus, and come along with me. Just raise the window gently, then mount and hold me tight. I'll take you on a journey and we'll have some fun tonight. Don't be afraid to trust me. I'll carry you with care. Perhaps you didn't know that I could gallop through the air. I'll show you lovely places that few children ever see, and bring you back in safety, so you come along with me." The little boy was frightened, but he did as he was told. He only had his nightie on, but still he wasn't cold. The horse jumped through the window right out into the sky. Over roofs and chimney pots the two began to fly. They jumped from house to housetop, barely lighting on the roofs, and through the city rocketed the rocking horse's hoofs. At last they reached the country, and they stopped beside a stream, the kind you only see when you're riding in a dream. And as upon the riverbank they rested for a while, they watched a sight so very queer that Jimmy had to smile. 100 little goblins were at work upon the shore, and trying hard to build a bridge before the night was o'er. They tugged at heavy timbers and at beams with all their might, but they couldn't seem to get the bridge to go together right. So when they all were weary and had given up their work, Jimmy laughed, kicked his horse's flank and gave the reins a jerk. "Go on and cross the river, you can swim it, Terrico." But the rocking horse stood still a while and quite refused to go. Then he turned his head around and toward the city galloped fast, and right across the windowsill he hurried back at last. He trotted little Jimmy in and tossed him on his cot, and just what happened after that, why, Jimmy quite forgot. The next thing he remembered, his mother came and said,
"It's broad daylight, my little boy. Come, jump right out of bed."
But what do you think his mother said when Jimmy told his dream?
"And did you help them, Jimmy, when they tried to bridge the stream? The goblins were so little and the timbers were so long. Why didn't you get off and help them? You're a big boy and so strong."
Jimmy looked at Terrico, who seemed to wink his eye, and Jimmy said, "Another time I think that I shall try." Well, it wasn't long before he had another chance to ride across the roofs at midnight with his rocking horse to guide. They flew again together and they found the very stream where the 100 little goblins were still struggling with a beam. Then Jimmy stopped and helped them, and he pushed and persevered till at last the bridge was finished and the goblins disappeared. Then off across the river flew the gallant rocking horse, o'er the meadow and the upland, o'er the heather and the gorse. They galloped over mountains, through the forest further still, till they reached a golden castle that was standing on a hill. And in the valley under it, an orchard, if you please, with enormous juicy oranges a-growing on the trees. Now Jimmy cared for oranges as kittens care for cream, and it seemed to him he ate about 100 in his dream. When he couldn't eat another one, he mounted Terrico, and slapped the reins upon his back and tried to make him go, for he looked up at the hillside, and he thought he'd like to try to get into the castle, since his rocking horse could fly. Instead of that, when Terrico had heard what Jimmy said, he turned his tail and galloped him immediately to bed. But what do you think his mother said when breakfast time had come?
"Why, I love oranges. I suppose you brought me some."
And Jimmy felt so badly when he looked at Terrico, who winked at him again when Jimmy had to answer, "No." It was Christmas Eve when Jimmy had his last and happiest dream, for he thought about his selfishness and had a little scheme. He thought he did not go to sleep, but got right out of bed and saddled up his rocking horse and went to ride instead. He crossed the little goblin's bridge and rode with all his might, till the castle and the orange trees again came into sight. He climbed into the orange trees and filled a little sack, then climbed upon his rocking horse and tried to ride him back. But Terrico went flying up along the castle wall and galloped little Jimmy in, the oranges and all. He took his little master to a room so filled with toys that Jimmy was the happiest of happy little boys. And when he woke next morning with his presents on his bed, and his mother came and saw him, what do you think his mother said? Not only,
Merry Christmas!
though she said that, I suppose, but,
Where did you get these oranges? I didn't give you those.
but Jimmy only laughed at her and said, "They are for you." And Terrico, he winked his eye, as though he thought he knew.